Welcome to The Gateway, your compass through uncharted waters of mystical and spirit communication, broadcast live from United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM New Orleans. I'm your host, CL Thomas. Super Bowl is happening right here in Las Vegas. So there are a lot of tourists in town right now, floating around in all the rain that we received the past few days. And with the tourists, of course, come all the Elvis weddings on the strip. When people get married, traditionally the vows state, till death do us part. But the union of two people is a contract that expires upon death. That's the idea. But does it have to be this way? Author Tim Blair's book, Ever Near, illuminates a remarkable bond between himself and his partner through sickness and in death. My guest, Tim, because of his automatic writing, the healing, and going through the whole process of grieving. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I am so glad to be here. This is wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Tim reached out to me this probably about a month ago, and he sent me his book. This is it right here. Ever Near is the name of it. But before we get into this, Tim, can you talk a little bit about how your journey into the metaphysical got started?
Sure. It really began about a little bit after my wife Marilyn and I got together. We had a long commute into Los Angeles from Lancaster, California, through the mountains, and we chose to listen to books on tape. And one we found was newly released Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. And we listened to that book in maybe two commutes, and then we immediately started it again, and it took over 6 months. We just listened to every sentence and discussed it for sometimes days, and that's kind of where we began. Then you fast forward till after Marilyn's passing. That was what was suggested to me to begin being able to communicate with her, was to go back to that book and begin where we began.
So you live currently in the Desert Hot Springs area, correct?
Yes, I do.
I stayed there over Thanksgiving.
Oh, you did?
Yes, and I went to a lot of the hot springs around town.
Yeah, they actually are hot. And the water coming out of the ground
are.
is 120, 130 degrees. They have to cool it off for you to get in it. So
one of the pools I found was 108 degrees.
Yeah, you can burn yourself pretty quick if you're not careful. But there's lots of spas and things out here. So Desert Hot Springs is actually kind of a little spa community. All up and down our main street are several little spas and bathing houses and stuff that actually use the hot spring.
So I read parts of your work, Ever Near, which is available on Amazon. Can you share what this book is about without letting too much out?
The book is about my wife's and my journey individually up until we met, and then through our marriage and a lot of difficulty that we had with circumstances that were created by our getting together. There were a lot of people pretty angry with us. And the book extends beyond her illness into her death. And in the 7 years that have passed, I have been able to communicate with her at will, anytime I want. It's an ongoing conversation. The book was written backwards. So the book is in 3 sections. The back half of the book is direct communication with Marilyn, my wife. The middle portion of the book is our time together before she passed. And the first part of the book is how we got to be together, both of our personal journeys to find each other.
So she passed away from cancer, correct?
Yeah, gastric cancer.
Can you share a little bit about what happened?
Sure. It was Thanksgiving 2015. We went to her mother's home for Thanksgiving dinner, and dinner wasn't quite ready, so she ate a little bit of a vegetable plate. Got really, really nauseated, which was really uncommon for her. At that point, she was so sick she had to just lay down for the rest of the day. From an injury that I had, I was on so much pain medication that I wasn't able to drive her home until much later in the evening. So um, at that point, we actually were able to understand that this was the beginning of the end of her physical time with me. Um, from the first symptoms, we were very busy through February. Um, she deteriorated. She couldn't put anything in her mouth to eat. She couldn't drink. And we were admitted to the hospital on Sunday, late February, when she was diagnosed with gastric cancer. And from that point, it took about 15 months of chemo and surgeries, and we were going to do radiation, but the cancer had shifted its location, so we couldn't do that. We did more chemo, and she finally passed away in 2017.
Oh, Tim, that's quite the journey.
It,
Were you involved in anything metaphysical during that time?
we had always had an understanding from the very beginning that we had been together before. There were just too many things that were just comfortable. Through our time together, 21 years married, we actually, people don't believe this, but we never had a crossword, not one. We never, everything was, if we had a disagreement, it was measured. We took our time, we discussed it, but there was never a crossword between us in 21 years. And so we felt we had always been together. And we thought that, well, since we had been together before, there would probably be a together later. And why not, if one of us passed away, why couldn't we be together during those circumstances with one of us on either side of what people refer to as the veil?
Okay. So a letter starts off the beginning of your work, and it kind of goes into, this was primarily the communications from your wife, right?
Yes.
On the other side?
Uh-huh.
So the story is your wife passes, and then you're able to communicate with her up until, is that still continuing?
Oh,
still
yeah.
Now? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm aware of her essence at any moment. I relax. We have conversations about everything, the same as if she was physically here.
How
I
did
need to get this ball out from under the table or we're all going to die. Excuse me. Oh, my goodness. Sorry. I knew that was going to happen. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that.
So how did these letters appear? How did the letters and the communication from your wife from the other side manifest themselves?
Initially, I was getting ready for my family to stay at our home after she had passed for her memorial service. I had 5 children coming in with all their kids. They were all going to stay. So I was outside trying to do a little yard work. And this is at the point where I actually thought that I needed to go back to my spiritual journey. I knew I could communicate with her. I didn't know how. We hadn't discussed how. We just thought it would happen, and it wasn't. And this was a week later, and I was getting a little frustrated. I had the thought, go back to where our spiritual journey began. I downloaded Conversations with God, put my earbuds in, went outside to do some yard work. From behind, I actually heard someone speaking, and I thought it was the neighbors. And so I disregarded it. A couple of minutes later, I heard the same speaking. This is exterior voice to my earbuds. I took the earbuds out and I heard her speak out loud the words, "Where have you been? I've missed you." From that point on, we were able to communicate constantly. It was often easiest if I was outside. For some reason, being inside the home made it seem dull and a little less clear. But I would go on early morning walks, and we would talk about absolutely everything. We argued about getting this dog. Actually, that was her idea. I didn't want him, and so he's kind of a miracle dog as well. And obviously, wanting to control today's
Yeah.
interview. So after it became obvious, down. When it became obvious that I couldn't maintain the home we had in Los Angeles, it was too big. We had set it up with 2 incomes in mind. And the pain from an injury that I'd had 20 years previous was getting too great for me to do that. So our plan that we had discussed while she was still alive was for me to move out here, where I could use the sale of the home. I could afford a smaller place with all the things I love to do and be able to afford some help. But the pain from the move it was so much I couldn't even walk to the kitchen. I was really in a lot of trouble.
Well, with these communications, at first, did you think you were crazy? What was the mental state that
Yeah,
you were going
it
through?
was. I felt very alone with the idea. I knew who it was, what was going on. I was really okay with it. But I wasn't able to find anybody to talk to about it. And I did feel very much alone with the experience. My family is certainly not prepared to deal with any kind of metaphysical thinking at all. So it was very much, I was on my own. I did feel not crazy, but out of place, if that makes sense. That what I was experiencing was not common in my family or normal within my community. Again.
It's okay, Tim.
Well, he's put this ball under my feet, and I can't reach it, and he can't reach it, and it's under stuff. So yeah, he does this whenever I'm on the phone too. So, I did feel out of place. I don't know that I felt crazy, but I did feel uncomfortable in that I didn't have anybody to talk to. I read several books. Oh my goodness. I read several books on the topic. Particularly, I felt really comfortable about Richard Martini's books, beginning with Flipside, and now he's written about 8 or 10 books on the subject, and that made me feel real like I fit somewhere. I didn't have anybody to talk to, but at least I understood that this was not as uncommon as it felt, and that I was okay. The writing didn't start until after I moved out here. I couldn't walk, I couldn't move, and instead of being able to walk where I felt really comfortable, one morning it was just get up, get a pen and paper, and write. And since that point in May of 2020, I've got about 300 different letters from her. The first book has got about 12 in it. So there's a lot of material from her to continue the series.
And when you say you have when these messages come, this is like you're talking about a form of automatic writing.
A form.
You're actually channeling your.
Yeah, it's kind of a formal way that we talk. I mean, like I say, we talk about, is the milk going to expire? Things that mundane. But at times it just feels like she has something really specific and very intentional that she wants me to know. At times it's personal, about my own health or something like that, or about our children's situations. But often it's something more profound and something that probably needs shared with a wider audience.
What you said about a lot of times when we're from a religious background, if what we're experiencing on a spirit level is different than what they're used to or what they accept within the confines of their dogma, so to speak,
Yeah.
A lot of times they won't. I mean, it's very easy not to fit in with that. I think a
Right.
lot of us had
I was
experienced something
raised very
similar.
much that way, and when Marilyn and I got together, we were actually asked to leave our church. So it had been at that point. By the time I started writing, it had been well. When I first heard her voice, it had been 22 years since we had been in any organized religion. Our family still um, believed that way, but we felt that it was just easier to be more spiritual than religious. It felt more true to ourselves.
Well, Desert Springs is the place for that. There's a lot of people out there who have those same beliefs.
It's a wonderful place. Um, with my health and mobility being an issue, I'm pretty isolated generally. I'm getting much better physically, but for the first 6 years I've been out here, um, I've been pretty much on my own property most of the time with that crazy dog. So
How far from Joshua Tree are you?
um, I think if driving, it's maybe 30 miles.
Okay. That's
You
what I
know,
thought. So if you
yeah,
go from where you are, if you go up the hill to Joshua, toward Joshua Tree Forest,
yeah,
right across from where that Joshua Tree Inn is, where Graham Parsons passed. I don't know if
uh-huh.
you know that story or not, but there's a big retreat center, and it started sometime in the 30s, and it's still being run. And they do a lot of psychic mediumship there. They run classes. They have all sorts of different things. They have like a lot of healing stuff, yoga. It might be something for you to look into.
Yeah, yeah. Like I say, as my mobility is getting better, um, there was a time that just grocery shopping was a 3-day ordeal. One day
Wow.
to rest, one day to go, one day to recover. And that's just recently resolving to a point that I can actually think about doing those kind of things. Um, it Joshua Tree has always been interesting for me because it's one of the areas that I can get with my motorhome and do some astrophotography. That's
Mhm.
close. That's really close. There's not as much light up there.
Yeah, it's a great place to do that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
subject matter that would be really interesting. So, yeah, I'm very interested in doing that. So that's wonderful news. I knew that there were places like that, but because of my situation, I didn't even look. It would be almost depressing to know something was that close and I couldn't make it.
Yeah, and they're very open. You can just drive there and go right in, but they've been doing experiments with the government, into remote viewing. They were studying a lot of remote viewing. They were working with, the Gateway program for the
Okay.
Monroe Institute. Um, they were running a bunch of yoga classes when I was there, and they were tapping into, mediumship and something else. I can't remember exactly what it was. Some kind of healing that they do
Okay.
there. It was very
Yeah, that
interesting
that
though.
sounds really interesting. I will definitely look that up and make a point of getting that direction as soon as I can.
And of course, Joshua Tree is known for a lot of the alien sightings and all that kind of stuff
Yeah.
too.
Yeah,
But
I'm that's that's an area that I'm very interested in, but have very little exposure to. However, as this book is becoming more out there, I'm being approached by more and more people in what you would think is the normal or the average paranormal world. Um, you know, Paranormal to me is just anything that's not normal.
yeah.
And the word normal I'm throwing out of my vocabulary. Is it common or not? That's kind of the way I'm trying to think. Is this common what I'm experiencing? I Normal is not something I associate with anything good.
I have a friend that just texted me, and she says she's listening right now. Her name is Amy. She had lost someone very significant to her. Her significant other passed away. What is your advice to her? I just want to throw that out there.
Oh, well, first of all, I'm truly sorry for your loss. It doesn't matter how connected you are, or how well you know that you can connect with someone who's on the other side. It still is really a challenge. It's deeply painful. That said, um, the easiest way that I've learned with talking to others who have done this sort of thing is to try to find a way to quiet your mind a bit, to get yourself out of the way. And if you really want to communicate with them, first have no expectation of what it will be. Um, don't choose for them how they will respond. And then it's simply finding a way to joyfully evoke a memory, whether that's a photograph or something. Sit in that joy with that person that you've lost. And that can help move that grief into more of a nostalgia where there's good and bad feelings. And from there, it's just ask questions. Um, you may think you're making up responses. It'll feel like you're making up the response. Or you may not feel anything at all, but continue to ask. And sooner or later, you'll actually you'll hear a response to the question before you've finished forming it. And that's a real way to know that you have made a connection. But
Mhm.
but also, if you hear music on the radio that reminds you of this person, um, that can be just as much communication. You
Absolutely.
you can sit in that moment with the person, and you're not necessarily reflecting on the memory of a past event, but you're sitting in the current moment with that person. If you realize that this is a new thing that's occurring and not a memory, memories can bring you to the current moment. But if you realize that that is a fresh new thing that's happening at that moment, that has a great deal more meaning and comfort. Um,
It's so true. And a lot of times I find just through mediumship work that if you ask spirit for a sign, like a specific sign, you'll get an answer.
yeah,
It's just a matter of trusting those answers, I guess.
right. And one of the things that Marilyn has told me is if you're demanding to see a rainbow, you're going to miss the sunrise. So if you must have a red bird, a cardinal show up on your windowsill, that may not be how your loved one chooses. You may be missing all sorts of beautiful things that are occurring in your life that you could attribute very easily to your loved one reaching out.
So, with all of the communication that started when you were receiving these messages, was it hard? Did it make it harder to process the grieving stage, or was it more helpful?
Well, it was helpful, but honestly, for me, Marilyn and I cheated a bit because we knew 15 months before she passed that she was going to. So a
Okay.
great deal of my grieving process occurred with her sitting next to me. So we processed a lot of that before, which allowed me to not be in such an emotional state when she did pass. So I was able to be open enough at the moment she reached out to me. I would believe she was reaching out to me the entire time. I just didn't know what to expect. Um, but
So,
but yeah, go
the
ahead.
question about automatic writing from the spirit world, have you been able to contact other spirits from the other side using this
Yes,
technique?
yes. I have someone who started as a mentor and is now a dear friend. But she challenged me to write from guides and masters, and I found that that's almost as easy. It's fluid. I was shocked how easy it was and how profound the messages were. Um, so we're generating subject matter for like the fifth and sixth book as we speak.
Wow. With the communications, do they ever tell you what the other side is like at all?
Um, my understanding of Marilyn's perspective is that she resides in the same physical space with just different laws of physics. So she's right here with me at this moment. Um, I can actually feel her essence on me. I can feel it. I can feel tingling, a warm, loving sensation. But there is nothing out of bounds. Um, there's travel throughout this universe and others. There's anything and everything is available to them, and is also available to me through her.
That almost sounds like parallel universe.
Yeah, it's very interesting when I start thinking about that. One of the things that I've learned for me, and it may not apply to anybody else, but the more I try to actually label my experience, the more I restrict it. Because of the way kind of language works in our brains. If if I say I can only write from her, it restricts my ability to do other things. If I say that I only receive communication outdoors, like I felt early, it really restricted what I could do. I didn't know. So in many ways, what we experience is very much open, and not being from this world until recently, this world of spirit communication, I don't have a lot of labels myself that I understand. I'm still learning the dialect and language of spirit communication, even though what I'm experiencing may be very advanced.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I don't understand what I'm doing. I don't have a label for what I'm doing. Other people ask me all the time, is it this, is it that? And I just don't know.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm not sure it matters to me. It may matter very much to many other people to understand what it is I'm doing. And that's fine. And that to me, that's no problem at all. If somebody else understands better what I'm doing, I'd love to hear about
it. Well, I think that's just a thing. I think especially within the paranormal community, they're so quick to group everything into these terms.
Right.
A lot of times. And I think it's just because, somebody wants to be called an expert at this and that. But let's be real. Nobody is an expert on anything in this field. They're really not. I don't care how long you've been doing it. Stuff changes almost daily in this field.
I don't doubt it. Just my experience with it, just in the last few years, that is growing day by day. It's like I had this narrow ability to speak to one person, and as I'm coming into this world of spirit, all of a sudden it's like 180 degrees. Everything in front of me and actually all around me is available, that I didn't even know existed. So for me, it's really an exciting time. It really is.
So you have a quote from your book that I really liked.
Okay.
And it says, "Nothing is forever lost. We continue to exist with those we love."
Yeah, that is kind of the whole book in a nutshell.
It is, but this was like a direct quote from one of the letters that your wife wrote, and just that line. We go through so much in this life, but in actuality, nothing is forever lost.
Yeah,
is what she's saying. Do you find that these letters? It's almost as if she's guiding you like a guardian angel.
Oh, definitely. I've had people ask me if she's actually my guide, and I stumbled over the question because it was something I'd never considered. I believe she guides me. To me, that's all that matters. In very simple things, sometimes it's as much as helping me know when to stop working on a project and set it aside and rest. Or it could be something as profound as writing several books. And some of the things that are that I'm working through right now, sorting some of the things she said, some of the letters are really something I'd never considered.
Can you give us just a little piece?
Let's see if I got something here. Sure. This is something I took from her December 2022. And I'll read some of it. The concept of life and death, before and after, of physical and etheric, is deeply flawed. It is all one continuum. While we continue to travel back and forth between what seems like two completely separate worlds, it is all one journey. Each of us is one soul on one path that has the ability to adapt physics to whatever realm or universe we choose to be in. Our relationships of love did not end simply because we changed where we are. Who we are never changes. We can change costumes to fit the current moment we find ourselves in, but again, who we are and who we love cannot change. It will not, just because the realm we are in requires different laws of physics. Just because your eyes cannot adjust to what may seem at times like total darkness does not mean that I no longer exist, or that I no longer love, or that I no longer desire to be near you. And it goes on and on from there.
So in other words, life does continue.
Absolutely, it continues, and it's all one journey. We tend to see our physical lives right now as the journey, but it began much sooner than that and extends far beyond that. It's all one journey.
Do you think that at some point, do we just keep coming back?
I believe so.
Over?
I believe very much in let's see how to put it. Incarnation as a matter of choice. One does not need to, but it's available. And the point to it, I believe, is to continue on a journey towards source. That the journey itself, actually, you hear sometimes that, people say, well, the journey is the goal isn't the where your destination is, the journey. But that's actually very true, because the journey never ends. So there is no real goal. The journey is the process of continuing on towards source. It's the only process.
And what is source?
To me, that I was raised with a literal God, that created the earth in 7 days. It was all literal. But I believe that it's more, much more than that. It is a term that's applied to everything, the energy of everything, the energy that surrounds everything. And I believe there's an intelligence involved in it, a creative intelligence. So, I've shifted quite a bit from my youth to what I believe. And I also believe that you really can't, as a human being, get your head totally wrapped around it. So almost every explanation falls a little short.
Yeah, that can be true.
Yeah, I don't know that anybody has, all the wisdom when it comes to explaining that.
Have you learned anything at all about the other side, such as what to expect, what life is like on the other side? If you choose not to come back, what happens then? Do you just go on to like a heaven?
I've got a friend who does research into this kind of thing, and he films folks that are under hypnosis or are working with a medium. And the first word that comes out of everybody's mouth when they refer to the other side is home. It's where we belong. Marilyn calls her condition right now her natural state. This is where this is what she is. Where we are now is kind of the dream reality. Where she is the actual reality. What people do is entirely up to them. I've heard folks playing golf or football, just or being in classrooms studying physics, studying creation, how to take energy and turn it into matter. So there seems to be almost an unlimited, undefined way of being that can be anything you want.
So Tim, I have a question.
Sure.
There's a place called Virginia City up in Nevada. I don't know if you've ever been there.
I haven't been, but I've
you heard about it.
I've seen the sign.
You've seen the sign. It's
Yeah.
It's a living ghost town.
Yeah.
And every time I go up there, and there's a group of people, every time any of us go up there, we feel like we've been there before. It's like the place calls out to us.
Yeah.
And so some of the people from this group started a like a little, what they call a soul circle.
Okay.
And we go up there like a couple of times a year just to hang out and go ghost hunting, that sort of thing. What is your idea? Do you think that there is a such thing as like soul families, soul circles, where people get together and they just reincarnate from lifetime to lifetime all together?
I do believe that. I don't believe it's like mandatory, but I believe Marilyn and I have reincarnated many, many, many times together. I believe that some of the people in my life have been with me many lifetimes. I've met people before, and I'm sure most people have, that you just all of a sudden know that you know them, without any really communication. Just standing next to somebody, you feel like you've been in that position with them before.
Right.
So yes, I believe that very much. And I believe that we feel that. Almost everybody has somebody that became a friend before they even spoke.
Do you believe that's true with places too, such as?
I think that a place can evoke that feeling. Yeah. So if some of your friends had actually lived in that area previously, and it could have been in ancient times, or as recent as when the town was actually a thriving community, sure, why not? I think that would be a valid thought. Of course, it's the kind of thing that if somebody serious asked you to prove it, it's like, well.
Well, it's like that would be like trying to prove God,
Yeah.
It's either you believe it or you don't.
Absolutely. And I think that's a real thing that when you start trying to describe some of these etheric situations, it comes out like a paradox, like two sides of a coin, opposites. It is and it's not, but it is and it's this or it's that, but it's everything combined to create a whole.
I feel like too, a lot of it is based on your own spiritual growth, too. And it's true through religion. It's true through anything paranormal, just even in personal life growth. It's what you perceive and how you grow from whatever it is that you experience. That's what life is all about, experiences. So for me, this was very hard. I've, grown up seeing ghosts and things like that. And for the longest time, I was afraid to say anything because it didn't line up with people's beliefs. And people were ever saying, well, you need to prove it. You need to, and it's like, no, I really don't need to prove it to you, because it's not up to me for you to believe. It's not my job to make you believe anything. It's up to you. So that was my...
Yeah, I believe as a very, very young child, I was able to see things that others didn't. But I was in a family that absolutely wanted cookie cutter people. They wanted me to be the same person as my great great grandfather. So everything was restricted, and imagination was really tamped down pretty quick. So now that I'm opening up, I see things now that that in my memory, it's like, well, yeah, I've seen that my whole life. I just didn't remember.
Have you ever experienced deja vu and realized that that was maybe something that you've experienced before in some other life?
Yes, especially Marilyn and I together when we were physically together. There was a lot of that going on. Situations that came up that just confounded the rest of the family that we just seemed to know the answer to. So it was like almost neck snapping. We've been here before. We know how to handle this. So yes, and even now, just a little thing out of the corner of your eye will take you to a memory of something that maybe not be of this lifetime. If that makes sense?
Mm-hmm. So I know that you talk about she had daughters.
Yeah.
Are they able to communicate with her as well through this process?
Her youngest daughter is really still in grief, even 7 years after her mom passed. Her biological father died 4 or 5 years before Marilyn did. So there was this double whammy for her as a young adult that's difficult, and she's not fully recovered from. My kids, my two daughters, they are completely aware that Marilyn is around them and guiding them. They don't specifically communicate, but they are very comforted knowing that, and sometimes it's just they think that she's so ingrained in their mind that they know what she would do. And there are times that it's just plain as day that she pointed them in the right direction to do something they would not have done.
That's interesting. So you said that this experience continues today. Have the messages changed or evolved along the way?
Yeah, they've become less and less about my own physical challenges and how to handle those, and more about learning to share things with a wider audience, and opening up myself to a greater experience. So there's a lot of that, a lot of pushing me towards meditation, something that was difficult, and it is getting easier. I've learned not to think of myself as a meditation practitioner, rather a person who is practicing at meditation. So I don't have to do it right every time. If you're practicing, you can screw it up, and nobody cares.
So I just have another quick question that just came through. What about other planets, like life on other planets and aliens? Do you believe that humans here on Earth can go to a different planet and live a life cycle?
I believe that's true. Simply put, if you believe that where we're at now is not our natural state, that makes us aliens now.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it does.
So that perspective allows you really easy access to the thought. Of course, why couldn't you be somewhere else in a different type of body, in a different environment, with a different access to intelligence? It just seems that there would be so much spiritual learning, so much depth in that process too.
Have you heard about spirits being trapped in a place and haunting buildings and things like that?
I've heard about it, but
What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I really haven't addressed it myself enough to know that much about it. It sounds challenging, but trapped sounds that word challenges me. Maybe a choice, but I don't know about trapped. Like I say, it's not something that has been a focus for me ever. It's something I'm becoming aware of, and the terms that folks use to describe that sort of thing. But other than just surface reading of the topic, I've really not done any studying, so it's hard to have a real deep opinion. But I would hope that nobody's trapped. That would be my hope. That folks are where they are because they choose to be there, or maybe it was a choice long ago and they forgot. I don't know.
Do you consider yourself a medium since you connect with the other side?
That term is something that those who have come in contact with are starting to apply to me. They did very early on. Some of my earliest contacts with mediums, they said, it was like, you could do this too, if you chose. And my focus has been primarily connecting with spirit through writing. And so again, if I were to train and do those things, I know I could connect with spirit. Marilyn's brother has come through. My mom's partner, who passed years ago, has come through. I've talked to both my grandfathers. So yeah, I could if I wanted. But this has got me really, really busier than I've ever imagined I could be.
Wow. So do you think, I'm just trying to think about, you have a soul circle and then you cycle through life and then you choose you want to come back. Do you sign up for different things to happen in your life?
In broad strokes, probably yes. I think you choose your parents. I think it's that detailed. I think you choose the general circumstance.
I forget that there's a term for this, and I can't remember the term.
Again, I'm not really,
like
a contract, maybe a contract. I'm not really big on terms. So, if you're asking me, I might draw a blank. But
yeah,
what I do believe is that you can have a really good plan, but as humans, we get to choose again once it's not like, you've got this grand plan that you've intertwined with other souls and everybody's on board. And then Joe decides to go off script and it screws everybody up. So for me, Marilyn puts it kind of like this: is when you jump into the ocean of the currents of life, you don't always get to choose once you're there where it takes you, but you do get to choose how you respond. So you can have a great plan and it can be almost perfect. And the lessons you intend on bringing to yourself may be deep, and you may get here and just decide you want to take vacation instead.
So how's this communication from the other side influenced you in any way to teach others about moving through that grieving process?
I think that the reason I wrote the book was to allow folks to see that first, death is not an end. That it can be just as intimate and profound as a physical relationship. And this first book, again, is kind of opening the door to further things that we've got to say. I say I've got so much material. It's almost a matter of boiling it down to what communications relate the story that's next in our several book journey.
So if death is just a transition, as you stated, can you talk about how this can influence how we as a culture views death?
I think that if this were widely accepted, which I believe we're trending that direction, and I don't know if that means decades or centuries, but I believe that humanity is heading towards an understanding that death is more of a spiritual experience than it is an end to something. as humans, we know finite things. The book ends. The movie ends. Supper is done. Everything has a beginning and an end, and that's a hard collective habit to break. It will take time, but yeah, I think that humanity will trend to understanding that death is only a physical death. It's only a physical body that dies, and that after that occurs, there's an expansiveness to the essence of what is remaining, and it can have the same personality. It can have a greater reach. Marilyn can be with me and my daughters in what appears to me to be simultaneous time.
And that can happen for anyone, right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I believe so. I believe that in some ways, Marilyn's and my experience is kind of, I don't know how to say it that doesn't sound too cocky, but we're kind of a prototype of what could occur. This is what's possible. I think that's if I could say anything, that would be it. Our relationship is what is possible on an individual scale as well as a global scale. And if everybody knew that nobody really dies, it might change our perspective on war, on hunger. It might change absolutely every aspect of humanity. It would certainly change. If you thought you were coming back, it might change how well you take care of the planet.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. So where can people find you, and what are you working on right now?
Right now, I am consolidating communication into book 2, which I'll begin to write here shortly. I've got a website, timbear6.com, and I can be reached there. My book is on Amazon, ever near. I have a presence on Facebook, just starting to learn Instagram and things like this. This kind of the process of being exposed to the public a little bit with a book kind of caught me off guard, and I'm a little bit behind on getting social media presence up and running. But yeah, my website is there. I've got a few stories. I've got the story of how Bair came into my life, a couple other things, and with any luck, there'll be notifications and things about the upcoming book that probably early 2025. I found that I can write 8 pages from Marilyn in a half hour. It takes me 3 hours to write a 2-paragraph email. So there's that. I wish I'd paid better attention in high school literature classes. Would have been easier.
Well, here's his book, everyone. This is what it looks like. We got a cute picture of himself and his wife. So it's found on Amazon.
Yep, that picture was actually up at the top of the Palm Springs tram.
Wow. Well, Tim, we are at the bottom of the hour. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to talk about?
Oh, I don't know. Like I say, I am just learning so much of what is available to me in this world of spirit. I wake up every morning with not a lot of questions, but a lot of anticipation for what the day may bring. I spent a lot of time photographing the area here, which I try to post occasionally, sometimes with some of quotes of Marilyn's. I think, again, right now with this book, the biggest thing is death doesn't end. If I could just make it, death just doesn't end anything, really. It actually allows expansion. I am aware of things that I was not aware of before. Marilyn is not with me just when she's at home from work. She's with me 24/7. It is a much more intimate relationship than I could have ever imagined. And there's more to come. We have quite a bit more to do.
Well, Tim, I really look forward to your second book. I'm definitely going to have you back on the show.
Okay. That sounds like a fun thing.
I've done some photography in Joshua Tree as well just recently. So we'll have to compare notes on doing photography up there because that's just a wonderful place.
Yeah, I can't wait to get up there. I've got some equipment that I bought so that I could do astrophotography, and I found out that it's not dark enough here.
It is in Joshua Tree, though.
Yeah, in Joshua Tree, and it's only 30 miles away. And now that I can motor around a little bit easier, I'm looking forward to that quite a bit.
You can actually stay out there overnight.
Yeah, I'm planning on dragging the motorhome up there, and that way I can lock Bair inside so he doesn't knock the tripod over.
Well, Tim, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You've been listening to The Gateway, your portal to the unexplained and mystical and the otherworldly, broadcast live from United Public Radio Network 107.7 New Orleans. Find me online or on social media to find out the latest in books and artwork created by me at www.clthomas.org. Until next time.